The probe shattered against what should have been a gentle breeze. Cray stared at the readings with 3 of his 4 eyes, while the 4th focused on the impossible data streaming across his console. Wind speeds that could tear apart reinforced metal, atmospheric pressure that crushed standard equipment, and temperature swings that would kill most known life forms within minutes. Yet somehow, this blue and green planet teemed with more biological activity than the rest of the star system combined. Run the scan again, Cray told his assistant Valen, though he knew the results would remain the same. The 3rd planet orbiting. The yellow star defied every rule of planetary habitability they had learned in 2 centuries of galactic exploration. According to their instruments, nothing should survive down there. According to the same instruments, billions of complex organisms called this nightmare world home. Valen manipulated her controls with delicate tentacles, her species known throughout the Council for their precise scientific methods. The new readings matched the old ones perfectly. Massive creatures with teeth longer than a grown Altarian dominated the land surfaces. Flying predators with wingspans that dwarfed most transport vehicles soared through skies filled with electrical storms. The oceans contained hunters so large that entire council fleets could disappear into their mouths without a trace. Sir, the atmospheric composition shows oxygen levels that would be toxic to most council species, Valen reported, her voice trembling slightly. The surface gravity is 50% higher than standard, and the radiation from their star would require level 5 protective gear for extended exposure. Cray nodded grimly. Standard protocol demanded they classify this as a dead world and move on to survey the next system. But the biological readings refused to cooperate with protocol. Every scan revealed new impossibilities. Plants that thrived in soil so acidic it would dissolve their survey equipment. Animals that somehow survived in water cold enough to freeze most blood types solid. And, strangest of all, a bipedal species that had built structures across every continent, despite living surrounded by countless ways to die. The first visual records arrived, 3 hours later, transmitted from a heavily shielded observation probe that had managed to survive entry into the planet's violent atmosphere. Cray watched in stunned silence as the images revealed a world that should not exist. The bipedal creatures, apparently called humans, according to their primitive radio transmissions, had somehow risen to dominance on a planet that seemed designed to kill them. These humans had built their largest settlements directly on top of geological fault lines, where the planet's crust shifted and cracked without warning. They farmed crops in the shadow of mountains that regularly exploded with liquid, rock and poisonous gases. Their vessels crossed oceans filled with predators that could swallow them whole, while storms capable of leveling cities formed and dissipated with terrifying frequency. "Look at this," Valen whispered, highlighting a section of the visual feed. A group of humans was deliberately climbing one of the planet's tallest peaks, a mountain where the air was too thin to breathe and temperatures dropped far below the freezing point of water. They carried primitive equipment and moved slowly through conditions that would incapacitate most council species within minutes. Some of them were not even wearing adequate protective gear. "They appear to be doing this voluntarily," Cray observed, noting the absence of any coercion or emergency situation. "Our translators indicate they call it recreation." The implication sent a chill through the bridge crew that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. A species that sought out mortal danger for entertainment was beyond their understanding. Council civilization had developed by avoiding risk, by creating safe environments where citizens could live and work without constant threat of death. These humans seemed to embrace the very dangers that other species spent millennia learning to escape. More data poured in from the struggling probe as it transmitted everything it could before the hostile environment inevitably destroyed it. The humans had discovered methods to harness the planet's violent weather patterns, converting the energy from storms into power for their settlements. They had learned to predict and survive the mountain explosions, even using the fertile soil created by the destruction to grow food. Most incredibly, they had developed medicine to treat injuries and illnesses that would be instantly fatal to most other known life forms. Sir, Valen's voice carried a note of professional excitement mixed with deep unease. The probe has detected organized combat between human groups, but not over resources or territory disputes, as we might expect. They appear to engage in ritualized warfare for entertainment purposes, with complex rules governing the level of violence permitted. Cray examined the combat footage with growing alarm. The humans moved with coordination and tactical awareness that rivaled trained military units from the most advanced Council worlds. They demonstrated physical capabilities that suggested their dangerous environment had forged them into natural warriors. Their reflexes, endurance, and pain tolerance all exceeded normal parameters for sapient species by significant margins. They have domesticated some of the predator species, Valen continued, her scientific training warring with her instinctive fear of what they were discovering. Large carnivores with powerful jaws and territorial instincts now serve as companions and guardians for human families. The humans appear to have formed emotional bonds with creatures that could kill them effortlessly. The final transmission from the probe before its destruction provided the most disturbing revelation of all. Human settlements existed in every climate zone the planet offered, from frozen wastelands where water became solid to desert regions where the heat would cook most organic matter. They had adapted their behavior and technology to survive in environments so diverse that most Council species required different biological modifications for each one. Prepare a priority transmission to Council headquarters, Cray ordered, his decision made, despite the magnitude of its implications. We need to report the discovery of a new type of world classification. This planet represents something we have never encountered before. As the survey ship prepared to depart for Council space, Cray reviewed the data one final time. The humans had achieved spaceflight using primitive chemical rockets, showing the same disregard for personal safety that characterized everything else about their species. Their early space missions involved strapping themselves to controlled explosions and hurling their bodies beyond their planet's protective atmosphere with technology that had significant failure rates. The report would change everything. For the first time in Council history, they had found a world so hostile that it had created inhabitants capable of surviving anywhere in the galaxy. The question that would soon divide Council leadership was simple but terrifying. What would happen when these nearly indestructible humans developed the technology to leave their Deathworld and explore the stars? The answer would reshape galactic civilization in ways none of them could yet imagine. Earth had introduced a new variable into the cosmic equation, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered around the massive circular chamber. Holographic displays showed images from Earth that had kept xenobiologists awake for weeks, while heated debates erupted in 17 different languages simultaneously. The translation systems struggled to keep pace with the rapid exchanges between delegates who had traveled from across the galaxy to address what many were calling the most insignificant discovery in Council history. Ambassador Thane's crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, a sure sign of agitation among his silicon-based people. His homeworld of Quartzheim was considered moderately dangerous due to its high radiation levels, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for what the survey teams had found orbiting that unremarkable yellow star. The images from Earth showed a world so thoroughly hostile that it challenged every assumption about the development of intelligent life. The evidence is clear, Thane announced, his voice resonating through the chamber's acoustic systems. This planet represents an immediate threat to galactic security. We must establish a quarantine zone and prohibit all contact until we can assess the full extent of the danger these humans might pose. Representative Nala of the collective disagreed with a series of rapid clicks that her translator converted to standard galactic speech. Her aquatic species had evolved in the relatively calm oceans of Titus, where the most serious natural threat was an occasional storm system. The concept of a world where massive predators roamed freely while sapient beings built cities around them was beyond her comprehension. We cannot make policy based on fear, Nala argued, her gill slits fluttering with emotion. These humans have achieved remarkable adaptations to their environment. Studying their methods could advance our understanding of survival biology by centuries. We must initiate careful contact protocols and learn from them. The debate continued for hours as experts presented their findings to the assembled representatives. Dr. Roth, the Council's leading authority on planetary ecosystems, displayed three-dimensional models showing Earth's incredible biodiversity. Over 2 million documented species lived in constant predator-prey relationships, creating a web of survival strategies that boggled the scientific mind. Observe the human response to natural disasters, Dr. Roth explained, manipulating the holographic display to show footage of humans dealing with various catastrophes. When their cities are destroyed by seismic activity, they rebuild in the same locations. When atmospheric disturbances demolish their structures, they develop stronger building techniques. They do not retreat from danger. They adapt and overcome. Climatologist Zara presented equally disturbing evidence about Earth's weather systems. Her own species had evolved on a world with predictable seasonal patterns and gentle atmospheric variations. The idea of storms that could level cities, or temperature swings that killed vegetation across entire continents, was the stuff of nightmares, not natural planetary conditions. The humans have learned to predict these weather catastrophes with remarkable accuracy, Zara reported, her voice filled with professional admiration mixed with personal terror. They have developed early warning systems and evacuation procedures that allow them to survive events that would wipe out most other civilizations. More importantly, they use the energy from these destructive phenomena to power their technology. The most shocking revelations came from behavioral analyst Dr. Keth, whose studies of human psychology had revealed patterns that violated every known model of sapient development. His species, the peaceful Etherians, had eliminated warfare from their society over a millennium ago through careful social engineering. The concept of organized violence as entertainment was incomprehensible to their way of thinking. Humans engage in combat sports that would hospitalize most council species, Dr. Keth explained, displaying footage of various human athletic competitions. They deliberately subject themselves to physical trauma for the approval of observers. They race mechanical vehicles at speeds that make collision potentially fatal. They compete to see who can endure the most physical hardship over extended periods. The assembly grew increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. These humans were not just survivors of a hostile world. They were a species that had been forged by constant danger into something unprecedented in galactic civilization. Their physical capabilities exceeded normal parameters. Their technology was designed around surviving catastrophic failures, and their psychology was adapted to thrive under conditions that would break most other minds. Dr. Valen took the podium to present her revolutionary proposal. Her tentacles moved gracefully as she manipulated the control interface, displaying classification charts that had been used to categorize worlds for over 2 centuries. The existing system ranged from Class 1 paradise worlds with minimal environmental challenges to Class 12 death worlds, where only the most extreme survival methods allowed temporary habitation. The current classification system is inadequate for describing what we have found, Dr. Valen announced, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. Earth combines every possible threat into a single planetary environment while maintaining perfect ecological balance. We need a new category entirely. The proposal she presented created Classification X7, reserved for worlds so hostile they produced life forms capable of adapting to any environment in the galaxy. The classification would trigger unprecedented security protocols, requiring Council approval for any contact with species originating from such worlds. The implications were staggering. If other X7 worlds existed, they might harbor equally dangerous life forms. The vote took place over 3 days of intense debate. Military representatives argued that humans posed an existential threat to galactic peace, while scientists insisted that the knowledge they could provide was invaluable. Economists pointed out that human adaptability could revolutionize colonization efforts, while philosophers questioned whether a species forged by such brutal conditions could ever integrate peacefully with Council civilization. The final tally was closer than anyone had expected, by a margin of just 4 votes. The Council approved the new classification system and designated Earth as the first X7 world. The decision came with strict observation protocols and a complete ban on direct contact until further research could determine the safest approach to dealing with these remarkable but potentially dangerous humans. As the representatives prepared to return to their home worlds, many carried with them a troubling thought. If Earth could exist as a functioning planetary system, despite conditions that should have prevented complex life from developing, what other impossible worlds might be lurking in the unexplored regions of the galaxy? The universe had just become a much more dangerous and unpredictable place, and humans were only the beginning of what they might eventually discover. The classified orders arrived through encrypted channels that bypassed normal Council oversight, reaching only a select group of exploration vessel commanders who had been deemed trustworthy enough to handle the most sensitive operations. Among them was Ren, whose career spanning 3 decades of deep space reconnaissance had earned him a reputation for completing missions that others considered impossible. The sealed data package contained coordinates for Earth, detailed biological profiles of human physiology, and instructions that made Ren's secondary hearts skip several beats. He was to conduct covert extraction of small human groups and relocate them to various test environments throughout Council space. The purpose was simple: determine whether human adaptability was as remarkable as the initial report suggested. Sir, these orders appear to violate 17 different Council regulations regarding contact with primitive species, his first officer Mira observed, her scaled features showing the concern that her professional training demanded she express. The unauthorized relocation of sapient beings could result in court-martial proceedings for the entire command crew. Ren studied the authorization codes embedded within the transmission. The genetic markers belonged to Council members whose influence extended far beyond their official positions. Individuals who shaped galactic policy through methods that never appeared in public records. This operation had support at the highest levels, even if it would never be officially acknowledged. Log the orders as received and confirmed, Ren instructed, making his decision based on decades of experience with classified operations. Prepare the ship for extended reconnaissance duty. We will maintain complete communication silence until the mission is complete. The first extraction took place during Earth's night cycle, in a remote region where human settlements were sparse. The abduction technology worked flawlessly, though Ren noted, with professional interest, that the humans recovered from the stunning effects faster than most species would have. Even unconscious, their bodies seemed to be fighting against the paralysis that kept them docile during transport. Tom, the human who appeared to be the group's natural leader, was the first to regain consciousness in the holding area. His reaction was neither panic nor submission, but rather a calm assessment of his situation that reminded Ren uncomfortably of captured enemy soldiers he had encountered during his military service. The human examined his surroundings methodically, tested the strength of his restraints, and began speaking to his fellow captives in low, reassuring tones. Interesting, Mira commented, observing the humans through security monitors. Most species in similar circumstances would either be catatonic, with fear, or engaging in irrational behavior. These specimens appear to be developing an escape plan. The first test environment was Aridus, a desert world where temperatures soared beyond the tolerance levels of most organic life during the day cycle, and plummeted to deadly cold during the night cycle. Water existed only in deep underground reserves that required sophisticated equipment to access. Council survey teams had classified it as uninhabitable except for specialized research stations with full environmental support. Wren expected the humans to survive perhaps 2 or 3 days with the basic supplies his crew had provided. Instead, he watched through concealed observation equipment as Tom organized his group with military precision. Within hours, they had identified the prevailing wind patterns and begun construction of a shelter that would protect them from both the scorching heat and the bitter cold. "They are modifying the local geology," Mira reported, her voice filled with scientific fascination, "using primitive tools to redirect underground water flow toward their position. The technique is crude, but effective." By the third day, the humans had established sustainable food production using desert plants that council botanists had dismissed as decorative at best. Tom had discovered that certain root systems could be processed into nutritious meals, while other vegetation provided materials for textiles and tool construction. The group was not merely surviving, they were beginning to thrive. The second test on the ice moon frost produced even more dramatic results. The humans were deposited in a region where surface temperatures never rose above the freezing point of most known biological fluids. Council scientists had calculated that organic beings would have perhaps 6 hours before hypothermia rendered them unconscious, and 12 hours before death became inevitable. The humans lasted 6 weeks. Tom and his companions constructed elaborate ice caves that provided both shelter and defense against the native predators that roamed the frozen wasteland. They learned to hunt creatures that Council military units approached only with heavy weapons and armor. Most remarkably, they seemed to find the environment challenging rather than terrifying, often engaging in unnecessary physical activities that served no survival purpose. "They are competing with each other," Myra observed, pointing to footage of the humans racing across treacherous ice formations, deliberately placing themselves in additional danger for no practical reason. This behavior contradicts every model of survival psychology we have developed. The jungle world verdant presented different challenges. Dense vegetation blocked sunlight from reaching the ground level, while the atmosphere contained spores and toxins that required constant medical treatment for most visiting species. Predatory plants could dissolve organic matter within minutes, while the animal life included creatures whose venom was potent enough to kill a fully grown in seconds. Tom's group adapted with the same systematic approach they had shown on previous worlds. They identified edible plants through careful testing methods that would have impressed trained xenobotanists. They learned to recognize and avoid the most dangerous fauna, while domesticating others for protection and companionship. Within a month, they had established a thriving settlement that other species would have required years of preparation and massive resource investments to achieve. The final test on Toxus pushed human adaptability beyond anything Wren had thought possible. The planet's atmosphere was a cocktail of compounds that were individually dangerous and collectively lethal to most known life forms. Council personnel required sealed environmental suits and constant medical monitoring for even brief surface visits. The death rate among research teams was significant, despite all precautions. The humans survived by engineering basic filtration systems from local materials and developing techniques to neutralize the most dangerous atmospheric components. They identified underground areas where natural air currents created pockets of breathable atmosphere and expanded these safe zones through careful environmental modification. Most incredibly, they began cultivating food crops in soil that should have been too contaminated to support any organic growth. "Sir, the implications of these test results are staggering," Mira reported, as they prepared to return the humans to Earth. "This species demonstrates adaptive capabilities that exceed our most optimistic projections. They are not just surviving these environments, They are actively improving them. Ren reviewed the accumulated data with growing unease. The humans had proven they could colonize virtually any world in the galaxy, given minimal resources and preparation time. Their methods were crude compared to Council technology, but their effectiveness was undeniable. More troubling still, they seemed to genuinely enjoy the challenges that would terrorize most other species. The unauthorized tests had answered the questions that Council leadership needed answered, but the answers themselves raised far more serious concerns. When humans developed interstellar travel capabilities, no world in the galaxy would be beyond their reach. The species that had conquered the ultimate death world was ready to tackle any environment the universe could offer, as the humans were. Returned to Earth with their memories of the experience carefully suppressed, Ren prepared his classified report. The test results would reshape galactic policy in ways that none of them could yet fully comprehend. Humanity had passed every challenge, with remarkable success, proving that Earth had indeed created the ultimate survivors. The classified intelligence briefing took place in a conference room deep within Council headquarters, where the walls were lined with signal-blocking materials, and the attendees had been selected for their security clearances and psychological stability. Admiral Koss reviewed the assembled group with satisfaction, knowing that each individual present had been chosen specifically for their ability to handle information that could destabilize galactic civilization if it became public knowledge. The holographic displays activated automatically as the attendees took their seats, showing surveillance footage from Earth that had been collected over the past several months through increasingly sophisticated observation methods. The images were disturbing enough to cause visible discomfort among representatives whose own species had evolved on worlds where survival was a matter of avoiding danger rather than conquering it. What you are about to see represents a fundamental challenge to our understanding of sapient development, Admiral Koss announced, his metallic voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades making decisions that affected billions of lives. The humans of Earth have demonstrated capabilities that suggest our models of civilization may be dangerously incomplete. The first series of recordings showed human recreational activities that defied rational explanation. Groups of humans deliberately threw themselves from aircraft at extreme altitudes, relying on flimsy fabric devices to prevent their deaths upon impact with the ground. Others descended into crushing ocean depths, where the pressure would liquefy most organic matter, using primitive breathing apparatus that had significant failure rates. They call these activities extreme sports, explained intelligence analyst Dr. Beth, whose own species had eliminated all unnecessarily dangerous behavior through careful social conditioning over several millennia. Our behavioral models suggest that sapient beings naturally develop risk aversion as their intelligence increases. Humans appear to have developed in the opposite direction. The recordings continued with footage of humans deliberately climbing vertical rock faces without adequate safety equipment, racing mechanical vehicles at speeds where collision meant certain death, and competing to see who could endure the most physical punishment over extended periods. Each activity seemed designed to maximize the possibility of serious injury or death, while providing no obvious survival benefit. Note the psychological responses, Dr. Beth continued, highlighting brain scan data that had been obtained through covert medical surveillance. Humans experiencing mortal danger show increased activity in pleasure centers rather than fear responses. They are neurologically programmed to enjoy situations that would trigger panic responses in most other species. Admiral Koss manipulated the display controls to show military intelligence that had been gathered through careful observation of human conflict zones. The footage revealed combat techniques and tactical innovations that impressed even veteran Council military strategists. Humans moved through dangerous terrain with confidence that bordered on recklessness, yet their casualty rates were remarkably low due to their advanced adaptation to hazardous conditions. Their military organizations trained personnel by deliberately exposing them to life-threatening situations, reported Colonel Dax. whose own combat experience spanned multiple galactic conflicts. They use live ammunition in training exercises, conduct operations in hostile environments without full protective gear, and subject recruits to physical and psychological stress that would incapacitate most other species. The analysis revealed patterns that challenged every assumption about how intelligent species developed survival strategies, where other civilizations had progressed by creating increasingly safe environments and eliminating sources of danger. Humans had evolved by mastering every threat their world could produce. The result was a species that was attracted to rather than repelled by the very challenges that other beings spent their entire evolutionary history learning to avoid. Examine their urban planning, Dr. Beth instructed, displaying aerial views of major human cities. They construct their largest population centers directly on geological fault lines where seismic activity occurs regularly. When earthquakes destroy their buildings, they implement improved construction techniques and rebuild in the same locations. They do not relocate to safer areas. They engineer solutions that allow them to survive the dangers. The psychological profiles were equally revealing. Human children engaged in behaviors that would be considered pathologically dangerous among other species. They climbed high structures, played games that involved physical violence, and sought out experiences that triggered adrenaline responses. Rather than being discouraged by adult supervision, these activities were often encouraged as character-building exercises. Their educational systems deliberately expose developing minds to competitive stress. Dr. Beth explained, showing footage of human schools, where children engaged in organized combat sports and academic competitions that would be considered traumatic by most galactic standards. They believe that overcoming challenges and experiencing controlled failure builds psychological resilience. The breakthrough came when the research team analyzed the fundamental difference between human neural development and that of other sapient species. Most civilized beings had evolved fear responses that promoted survival through avoidance of danger. Humans had developed completely different neural pathways that promoted survival through mastery of danger. Their brains are structured to process risk as opportunity rather than threat, Dr. Beth announced, displaying comparative neurological scans, where other species experience stress hormones that promote flight responses. Humans experience biochemical rewards that promote fight responses. They have been conditioned by millions of years of evolution to seek out and conquer challenges rather than avoid them. The implications were staggering. A species that was neurologically programmed to embrace danger would not be contained by traditional deterrence methods. Threats that would discourage other civilizations might actually attract human attention and encourage them to develop countermeasures. Any attempt to restrict human expansion through displays of superior force could backfire spectacularly. Intelligence. Reports suggest they are less than 50 years away from achieving practical interstellar flight capabilities. Admiral Koss revealed, displaying classified assessments of human technological development. Their space program is advancing rapidly, despite setbacks that would discourage most other species. When their test vehicles explode or malfunction, they analyze the failures and build improved versions, rather than reconsidering the safety of space travel. The military implications were profound. Humans who could adapt to any planetary environment within days or weeks would be able to establish colonies on worlds that other species considered uninhabitable. Their attraction to dangerous challenges meant they would actively seek out the most hostile regions of the galaxy, rather than limiting themselves to safe, established trade routes. War with such a species would be unlike any conflict in recorded galactic history, Colonel Dax observed grimly. They would not be deterred by casualties or setbacks that would force other civilizations to seek peace terms. Their entire evolutionary psychology is designed around overcoming overwhelming odds through persistence and adaptation. The session concluded with a sobering assessment that would reshape Council policy for generations to come. Humanity represented not just a new type of intelligence, but a completely different approach to existence that could either revolutionize galactic civilization or destroy it. The question facing Council leadership was whether the galaxy was ready for a species that thrived on the very challenges that kept other civilizations awake at night. The final Council session stretched across 3 days, as representatives from every major galactic civilization gathered to address the human question. The massive assembly hall had been reconfigured to accommodate species with vastly different environmental requirements, creating zones of varying atmosphere, gravity, and temperature that allowed everyone to participate in what many considered the most important political gathering in recorded history. Tension filled the air as delegates reviewed intelligence reports that painted an increasingly complex picture of humanity. The species from Earth had demonstrated capabilities that could either usher in a new golden age of galactic expansion or lead to unprecedented conflicts that might reshape the balance of power among civilized worlds. The decision made here would determine whether first contact with humans would be conducted through diplomacy or military intervention. General Hacks of the Dominion military forces stood before the assembly with battle plans that his strategists had developed over months of careful analysis. His species had conquered 17 different star systems through superior firepower and tactical coordination, making them the acknowledged experts on interstellar warfare. Yet even his confidence seemed shaken as he presented his assessment of human military potential. Based on observed behavior patterns, humans would not respond to conventional deterrence methods. General Hacks reported, his forearms manipulating holographic displays that showed various conflict scenarios. Their psychological makeup suggests they would interpret military threats as challenges to overcome, rather than warnings to heed. Any attempt to restrict their expansion through force would likely result in a prolonged conflict with unpredictable outcomes. The war faction argued that waiting for humans to develop advanced space travel would only make an eventual conflict more costly. Their primitive technology could be overwhelmed easily now, but their rapid adaptation rate meant that any military advantage the Council possessed would be temporary at best. Several representatives called for immediate action before the human threat could grow beyond manageable proportions. Representative Yuna, of the hegemony, presented the opposing viewpoint with data that had been carefully compiled by Council economists and social scientists. Her aquatic species had built their civilization through careful resource management and peaceful expansion, making them natural advocates for diplomatic solutions to interstellar disputes. Military action against humans would violate every principle upon which the Council was founded, Yuna argued, her translation devices converting her complex chemical communications into standard galactic speech. We are a confederation dedicated to peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit. Attacking a species because we fear their potential capabilities would make us no better than the ancient conquerors our ancestors rejected. The economic arguments were equally compelling. Human adaptability could revolutionize colonization efforts throughout the galaxy, making previously uninhabitable worlds available for development. Their unique survival techniques could be applied to resource extraction in dangerous environments, while their psychological resilience could solve personnel problems that had plagued dangerous industrial operations for centuries. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Junior diplomat Ray had been included in the proceedings, primarily because his species was known for unconventional thinking patterns that sometimes produced innovative solutions to complex problems. His suggestion was so radical that it initially met with skeptical silence from the assembled representatives. Instead of viewing humans as a threat to be contained or eliminated, we should consider partnering with them, Ray proposed, his crystalline features shifting colors rapidly as he processed the implications of his own words. Their capabilities complement our technological advantages perfectly. We possess advanced space travel and manufacturing techniques, while they possess adaptation skills that could benefit every member species. The partnership proposal gained momentum as scientists and economists began exploring its practical applications. Human colonies could be established on worlds that were too dangerous for other species, creating resource extraction opportunities that had previously been impossible. Their military techniques could be studied and adapted to improve council defense capabilities. Most importantly, their psychological resilience could be taught to other species facing environmental challenges. Consider the terraforming implications alone, argued Dr. Vallon, presenting geological surveys of worlds that had been classified as permanently uninhabitable. Humans could establish preliminary colonies on these death worlds and gradually modify the environments to support other forms of life. Projects that would require centuries using conventional methods could be completed in decades with human assistance. The debate continued through the night cycle as representatives grappled with the magnitude of the decision they faced. The traditional approach of cautious observation and gradual contact had been developed for dealing with species that shared similar evolutionary backgrounds. Humans represented something entirely new that required unprecedented policies and procedures. The vote took place on the third day after extensive consultation with home governments across the galaxy. The final tally revealed how divided galactic opinion had become on the human question. By a margin of just 12 votes, the Council approved the partnership initiative rather than military intervention or continued isolation. The first human ambassador arrived 6 months later aboard a vessel that impressed Council engineers with its innovative design philosophy, where most starships prioritized passenger safety and system redundancy. The human craft emphasized adaptability and rapid repair capabilities. Its crew had been selected not for their diplomatic experience, but for their ability to represent humanity's unique approach to solving problems. Alex was a former test pilot whose career had involved deliberately flying experimental aircraft that had significant chances of catastrophic failure. Her selection as Earth's first interstellar representative sent a clear message about human values and priorities. She possessed the psychological resilience to handle first contact protocols while demonstrating the fearless curiosity that characterized her species. "We know you have been observing our world for some time," Alex announced during her opening address to the assembled council. "Your surveillance methods are quite sophisticated, though not as subtle as you might think. We are honored that you found us interesting enough to study so carefully." The admission that humans had detected council observation efforts came as a shock to intelligence services that prided themselves on operating without detection. Yet, Alex's tone suggested amusement rather than hostility, indicating that humans viewed the covert surveillance as a natural precaution rather than a hostile act. The partnership that developed exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Human adaptation techniques revolutionized approaches to environmental challenges that had stymied galactic civilization for millennia. Council technology accelerated human space exploration capabilities by centuries, allowing rapid expansion to worlds that had been beyond their reach within a generation. Former death worlds throughout Council space hosted thriving human colonies that served as bases for gradual terraforming efforts. Other species learned to embrace, rather than avoid, environmental challenges, guided by human instructors who taught them to see obstacles as opportunities for growth and development. The classification X7 designation remained unique to Earth, but its legacy transformed galactic civilization in ways that none of the original observers could have anticipated. The death world that had once seemed impossibly hostile became the template for a new age of expansion and discovery, proving that sometimes the most dangerous places in the universe produce the most valuable treasures.